What if everything you have been told about healing is only part of the story? What if true wellness requires looking beyond the physical and the mental? My guest today, Ellie, is a survivor of immense adversity and a practitioner of holistic healing, is here to guide us. In this episode, we will dive deep into her personal journey, the limitations of traditional approaches, and the power of reconnecting with our energetic and spiritual selves. Prepare to have your eyes opened to a new way of understanding health and healing. Welcome to Back to the Heart, a podcast for self-discovery, healing, and embracing true freedom. My name is Amanda, and I am your host, and I invite you to join me as we embark on a transformative journey back to your heart, where we get to choose love over fear. Hello and welcome back. As many of you may have heard one of my episodes recently on how incredibly important community is. Well, today I am bringing on a guest that has been part of my healing community, part of my healing journey, and also is very special because I know that some of you out there may have more of a science background. You're looking for the nuts and bolts, and you want the facts, and how can choosing love over fear really make a difference, and what does this even mean? Back to the heart. Where do I find this in a science book? Does this really make sense, or is this just some woo-woo shit? So I have my beautiful guest today, Eleameriz. I would like to introduce you and hear a little more about your story. And I think you've got the answers to guide our audience on how to take it from here to here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel very honored to be here. I love everything of even your title, Back to the Heart. Oh my God. I feel like that's been our journey, most people's journey. But for me, it started when I was, as young as 4 years old. Um, and growing up, just feeling so lost. I didn't meet my father till I was 8 years old. And my first memory of meeting him was him fighting with my mother about what type of child did you send me. And so my mother would work constantly. So I was always like with babysitter number one, babysitter number two. And these babysitters would have like 30 other kids, or sometimes just feed their kids and not feed me. And I remember my mom telling me a story of having to take me to the emergency room because she thought I was dying. And they gave me a little bottle of milk and of juice, and just realized that I wasn't being fed. Like everything that my mom would take to her, she was giving it to her kid. And so all of these stories, we were squatters. We lived in an apartment that basically what we called, or back in New York, what we would call crackheads, um, would use the apartments or empty spaces where people would just leave it. And my mom was in that building, and my uncle said, "Hey, people are leaving," because we lived with my uncle. Just get in there. And this was a place where the ceiling was falling through, roaches would fly. Um, and that's how I remember like my childhood. And my mom would tell me things like, "Don't worry, when your siblings get home," because they were back in our homeland, "when they come, I'll give you better food." So I would have to eat like one of my favorite meals was Chef Boyardee, right? And to a certain extent, now I'm like, wow, it was all perfect. It made me who I am today. I and I got more. Like it was that was just the beginning of where it started, is what I'm trying to tell you. Where it started for
Beautiful.
me to look for the journey. Like what happened? Because it all
Yeah.
starts when you're that young.
Absolutely. And then as you became an adult and you decided to take the medical path, so tell us a little bit more about your background, your education, from where you transition from your book knowledge into the heart knowledge.
Well, after going through sexual abuse, um, not feeling like I had any support, um, there was times that I actually slept outside, right? And we're talking New York, very hood street light projects. I don't know if any of those words ring a bell, but I'm sure people that know that world know. Um, I I went into the wrong energy, that energy of nobody's going to tell me what to do. And I'm not going to live in the hood. And this is not going to be my life. And I am going to find a way to be somebody. Right. So I said, and I'm never going to be in that circumstance again of feeling unsafe, of feeling lost, of not knowing who to go to because my mother was always working and the only time you would get any sort of discipline was if you did something wrong. So I made it like a task to be so perfect, to be, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and I'm gonna do everything exactly by the book. So I went to school, I got my master's, I even wanted to study law. And I was accepted in one of the most prestigious schools, NYU. And I actually went on vacation with my parents and missed like the whole enrollment orientation. And as it's a competitive school, you can't really, miss anything. So I ended up going to a different school. And just with life happening, I got married really young. Because one of the things that people don't know about experiencing sexual abuse is that you become very um, overly sexualized, I might say. You start to think that your worth is only if you give something up, right? So I'm only going to be worth something if I have a title, if a man is only going to pay attention to me if he wants to have sex with me. And if you start to really think that your self-worth is somewhere in a tangible thing, right? And so I went my whole life saying, I'm gonna get my control. I'm gonna be something. And so I switched from law because of things that happened, and I went into social work because I said one of the things I want is for no one to ever feel the way I felt. And so trying to grasp for answers and trying to grasp for answers, um, I would attend anything I would find, anything that would sound like the truth. I started getting into every single part of social work that you can think of. So whether it's the medical field, whether it's the homeless shelters, whether it's law, the Office of Human Rights. I even worked in the morgue at one time, watching the autopsies, giving families the what was the reason and the cause of death, and every single aspect of just helping people, what we would call social work, I went into it. And I started seeing a pattern of these people are just in pain and there's no one there to listen. There's no one there to say, hey, I know what you're going through. I've been there, I've done that. And let me tell you, right? Um, and I was like, this isn't about learning school and the healing isn't just about your brain. I realized that most of the time we were only looking for someone to love us, to be there, right? And I came across a profile one day of a man saying all of this. And I was astonished. I was like, oh my God, he's talking like me. And I followed him for a year and a half. Um, I'm pretty sure you know our dear friend Danny Morell. And I attended um, his 3-day event. And I was like, everything resonated. I was blown. I was like, this is exactly what I've been saying, right? And it's all about healing and getting back to your center, to yourself, to knowing that everything was perfect and you had everything you needed the whole time. But that's honestly how it started.
Yeah, for sure. And, you mentioned a lot of points earlier about how, having that sexual trauma, that was you seeking love and feeling like that was the way you were supposed to receive love. Um, that's that's not something that I'm sure you realized in that moment that it happened. That was something that you realized later on. Like, how did you discover that that was what you were feeling and that that was the response that you were, the way you were living your life based on that trauma? How did that come up?
You definitely look for the logic. I was very much in my head, very much in my brain, explain this, why doesn't this happen? And one thing I learned, Amanda, when you keep asking, life will find a way to give you the answers. It might not happen like, but I was so determined to understand that anytime I would talk to someone, but how about this and how about that? And being in my mind so much, but the desire and the decision of I am not gonna live like this is
Yeah.
what brought everything I needed. So in terms of the event, I go to the event, I start working with actually before that, I also did a class on femininity. So inside scoop, I had a relationship that I absolutely adored. I loved this man. And one day he said something so hurtful. And this was after I thought, like, oh, I'm healed, I'm done, I'm good. I'm a whole therapist, I'm here helping people. And he said something to me simple, but so hurtful. He said, you know what's, we had a phone call. We had like we were sitting next to each other, and one of my best friends calls in a FaceTime, and she's like, "Hey, oh my God, you guys look awesome together." And he says, "Yeah, we could look awesome together, but the problem with Ellie is that she wants to be the man in the relationship." Oh my God, it hurt. When I'm telling you, it hurt because I was like, how can he say that? But remember, when you are any sort of trauma you experience, any sort of situation that takes you into that fear, it removes you from your heart and automatically takes you to your mind. So that control, and I'm never going to be in this situation, and I'm going to make sure I'm safe, and and you go through this fighting with the world, for lack of a better word, um, really does put you in your masculine. And that's when I started to realize, well, I don't want to be in my masculine. I want to be in my heart. I want to feel I'm a woman. And I love being a woman. I don't want to sound like a man. I definitely don't want to compete with the man that I love. Um, and that would be where I would say I've realized I was in my mind. I've realized I was in my masculine. And what do I need to do to get back to my heart? And I took a class on femininity with an awesome coach. Um, and that's when the healing started through meditations, hypnosis. And I said, wow, there's more out there than just clinical therapy. And that drove me to look for more and bring more skill sets and bring more tools. And as I started working with clients and trying it out, I saw the results.
Yeah, I guess it's where sometimes we get to the point where one modality just isn't enough. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes it takes both pieces. It's like whenever people are looking to, you know, maybe improve their health, it's more than just the physical part, the actions and the physical activity. It's also the food and all of the things that go into our body, the things that touch our skin, the things that are in our environment. So it's both of those pieces. So it's realizing that you had patients that maybe had some problems and had some concerns or had clients that needed help, and only therapy or only medications wasn't going to affect it because those were hitting different pieces. You know, medications may be helping the body and therapy helping the mind, but there's still this big piece, this brain that's inside our hearts that has to heal and has to release to be able to get back to ourselves. So I can I can really resonate with that. And you know, your talks about the masculinity, I think as the masculine, we think about protection and safety. And whether that's as a child with the trauma that you received, or anybody's experience, that first time I think that we experience that feeling of unsafe, that we were not protected, that we immediately start putting up these walls and protection forces around us to take care of ourselves. And as women, we've been kind of pushed into this mentality of independence, which has so many valuable aspects to it, but can also push us too far to the extreme. And then it feels as though it's that control and that overpowering masculinity in the relationships. And I can say I experienced that same thing with previous relationships as well. And you have no idea, just the same as you. It's like all of a
And that's
sudden
what
you're there.
happened. I became
Yeah.
so eclectic in saying, well, and it's like it helped me mastered where I can see a person sits in front of me and I'm like, okay, this is your problem, this is what you need. Because it's not the same. It is the same for everyone in the sense that you're trying to get back to your heart. It is the sense for everyone where you lose the sense of safety and you lose the sense of self-worth. But how you get there might be different for everybody. And having someone guide you and point you in the right direction and be able to just see which aspect might be the one that clicks for you or might be the one that takes a good layer off so you can start seeing other things. It's just perfect. And so I've been able to take all these different aspects and tools that I use and just made it into a whole holistic practice where you look at all the aspects of the human design. One thing I tell my clients is for me, I think there's at least five. So when you're trying to heal and you're trying to find your way back to your heart, you should have emotional, physical, cognitive, spiritual, and energetic. And unfortunately, the way the medical field works now is that they stay in the first three, right? The physical, the mental, and sometimes maybe emotional. But if you don't hit the other two aspects, you're going to be stuck. And you will see people coming back to therapy, and you would hear the terms, oh, excuse me, I'm a product of therapy. And it's like, but why? You should not be in therapy all your life. You should have the initial guidance and then find the power within yourself to continue to find other answers and heal the parts of you that, have been lost. But it shouldn't be where you don't feel guided and you feel lost all because you're being treated as a number or statistics or the very person trying to guide you is also in your head all the time.
Well, and I think in our society, we've kind of decided to take on this label and like this badge of honor of like saying, even saying something like that, I'm a product of therapy. I mean, that's really taking on that victim mentality. Or, oh, I'm a label of, I'm even ADHD, or I'm this,
They
or I'm
own the
that.
diagnosis. They
Yeah.
own the diagnosis. And
Yeah.
no, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yes.
What's wrong is that you got detached, disconnected from your source, from your love, from source, from God, from your feelings. And whenever you're that disconnected and detached, you will have side effects that would look like a diagnosis. Diagnoses are just labels to help us build. And that's just me being raw. It's a diagnosis, it's a label put there so that you can tell the insurance or whoever you're going to tell, give me my money because this is what I'm working on. But it isn't
Yeah.
you.
Well, and even those words that we use in describing that, of people say that, I am anxious, instead of maybe I am feeling anxiety, or I am depressed. I am whatever it is. No, you are not. That is not you. Those are the symptoms that your body or your mind, your heart is physically or emotionally feeling. That's not who you are. And I think even those labels get us caught up here and keep us stuck from actually healing in totality.
And those actual symptoms that your body, it's your body telling you. So when you're depressed, you're stuck in the past. So I'm depressed because I lost this person. I'm depressed because I had this and I no longer have it. You're stuck in the past. So if it was to be anything other than a feeling, it's a situation. It's a timestamp, right? Anxiety is all about control. I'm in the future. What if this happens? What if that happens? I don't know what's going to happen over there, so I want to do this to keep safe because it might happen. So it's a lot of what ifs based on the future. And the only thing we really have is the present time. So if I'm in the present time, how can I label you past or future? It's interesting work when you really sit down to see that something so simple yet so great like love can heal everything you thought.
Yeah. In your experience, do you believe that any physical ailment can be healed? Like, is there,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and do you
I
believe that people can live with a medical prescription free life?
so I not only believe it, I know it because I've seen it. I've seen people be on Xanax all their life and all of a sudden be like, I don't need it anymore. But it takes not only does it take dedication, asking the question, deciding that you're no longer going to live like that, but also there are other aspects of us that we stop looking at. And we get all in our mind and think, well, I'm just going to solve this by therapy, for example. I'm just going to solve this by medication. What about your food? What about how you sleep? What about how you put on your body? I just posted the other day that everything that you do that you know that isn't good for you and may not be the utmost thing to do is you committing suicide. And that could be with anything. You're committing suicide every time you take that cigarette. You're committing suicide every time you're like, well, I'm just going to drink one Coke. You're committing suicide every time you're like, I'm not gonna sleep. I'm gonna break night and just work. You're committing suicide every time you're taking yourself to those areas where you know you don't like the people, it's toxic. I continue in this relationship that I know is not serving me any good, that I cry more than I smile. So there are so many things that we need to look at when we're talking about ourselves and healing ourselves for us to say, yes, you're right, I can do it. Yes, you're right. It's all placed in a way that it can heal. But it depends what you're looking at and what you're doing and how dedicated you are to it.
Yeah, I think that we can easily look at other people and say, well, here's something that you could be doing to change, or that they would be treating someone else very differently than we treat and choose to treat ourselves. And it's whenever we make that choice to take care of ourselves and, make those choices, like you said, of those things that we know are not good for our energy, for our body, for our spirit, whether that's, the foods or the lack of the exercise or the energy of the people around us in those relationships. And that is critical. And that's when those illnesses build up in our bodies. And I saw that for myself. I was, I guess, officially diagnosed with endometriosis back in 2018 and had three major surgeries that year. And the best specialist that did his own technique, created their own technique that cut the endometriosis out instead of just burning it off. And this is going to help you heal. Well, it still was a Band-Aid. It was a very expensive and excruciatingly painful recovery. Time soak, energy and life soak to still have those symptoms come back 2 years later. And that's whenever I was like,
Well, the
I'm not
medical
living.
field has one big flaw that I would like to bring to the light, and it's that it's all based on separation. So there is no connection to anything, whether that's the earth, right? The healing properties that nature all on its own has, whether it's our connection to our ancestors and how energy and negativity is passed along to us, and also how other people who may not be family but are in our space affect us, right? And so when the medical field has completes a major surgery, for example, they're not really curing anything. They're like you said, they're putting a band-aid, but it's because they themselves haven't studied the origin of where it came from. It could have been maternal energy, right? And this is where I tell my clients, you need to go do family constellations. Why? Because you want to stop all of those ancestral energies that are being passed down to you. And then you also want to clear out energy from your body that is not yours, that shape our perspective and our behaviors and our feelings in general. There are people that walk around all the time saying, why am I feeling like this? There's nothing wrong with my life. I have a nice house. I have a husband. I have a nice car. But I constantly feel like this. That may not be yours. Did you ever just consider that it may not be yours? You may
Yeah,
have to go clear it
definitely.
out.
I know there were trapped emotions and ancestral trauma that just went straight to the space right there. You know, the reproductive organs, and with all the other things coming at me with environmental toxins and taking birth control pills,
Which is why
25
it's
years of my life.
dangerous. And that's why it's dangerous to own these diagnoses because it may not
Yes.
be yours and now you're making it yours.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I went through all different types of modalities to heal myself, and none of those things were ever discussed, from the medical professionals. But the release and the things that I've done with my diet and my environment and my healing myself, removing those toxic relationships and energies out of my life, healing those past traumas, now I can live a pain free existence. And people think that they have to live like that, and that's what's so sad, is there is another way. And oftentimes it feels like these major situations have to come into people's lives to get like to an extreme point before they make a decision to make a change. And that's where I was. And what I want to help people with and to remind people is, if you have that feeling, like you just said, hopefully you are in a space where maybe everything is going right, but something's just not quite matching up or feeling right, that you'll take that opportunity to dig in and better understand maybe what that feeling really is. Why is it there? And to take actions to heal that part before it becomes some major tragedy, like, all of a sudden I'm in these excruciating pain, or it's a loss of a job or a heart attack or cancer or any of the things that come into people's lives. And it often feels like, oh my gosh, I just, got cheated on. I mean, I've gone through that. And it was like sometimes those moments where I was not in my power. I did not have the courage to take those steps of
And
action
women
for
think it's their
myself.
fault.
Yeah.
I mean, you start to look for the blame as to, and yes, we all do attract, that's hard to hear. We all do attract, right? Everything in our lives, but someone else's decision to step out or engage in infidelity is it's more about them. It probably had nothing to do with you. But we as women, we take that responsibility for others.
Yeah.
And we tend to lose the responsibility we have to ourselves and we just give off our energy, right? To things that had nothing to do with you. But that's part of our self-worth, right? How we see ourselves as a woman. In my culture, I always tell people it's very easy for your own parents to send you to be abused because there's an expectation as a Latina that you carry without unconsciously. And I'm pretty sure in other cultures they have the same experience. But it's the fact that we really think we're separate, that your story is different than mine. And it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful. We're we can all guide each other.
And that's really what this is about, is us sharing our stories to know that we are all connected and we are all one, and we can learn and heal and grow together. And what I've learned from those relationships and those situations was I was not in my power to make a decision that it wasn't the right place for me, that it wasn't the energy that matched me in that moment, that it took the universe little nudge in that other human being to make that choice that ended that relationship. Or sometimes it might be or losing that job, or having that physical illness that pushes you when you're not ready to step into your power and choose yourself and take care of yourself. Stuff like this happens for you to get that lesson today.
Right. I actually think it was supposed to be that way. Because if it's not, you don't learn it. Right. So when
Yeah,
you're saying I was in this relationship that was terrible, that didn't align with me, to a certain extent, it did for a certain amount of time to get you to that place.
exactly.
It's just perfect. But and I did it too, where you're like, well, why did this happen to me? But now I'm so angry, and I walked around life very angry. But I used that anger to get me to the answers. And that's what my message, if anything, if you're sad, if you're depressed, if you're angry, if you have anxiousness and you're constantly on edge, I'm not going to tell you to get rid of it. I'm going to tell you to use it as fuel. I'm so sad that I don't want to feel sad anymore. And this is what I want to do about it. I was so angry that somebody's going to get me the answer. And here we are. We can give you the answers.
Right. Well, and now you think about all of the different people that you've been able to help with living their best life and getting off of medication and healing themselves both physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, that you wouldn't be in this place to be doing that had those things not happened to you the way that they did, and everything that
Exactly.
aligns up in that perfect timing.
Exactly. And it's the people who are closest to you that hurt you the most. And that was a hard lesson for me to see, because we have an expectation that family is supposed to be everything. And only people who are that close to you can have the opportunity to hurt you.
Yeah.
And once you learn to leave the expectations and just learn that everything's perfect and it was a gift to make you who you are, you start becoming whole. Because if I reject, whether it was the hunger, whether it was the sleepless nights, whether it was the relationship with my mother, or the sexual abuse, then who's Ellie Ramirez? Who is she? I can't tell you who she is if I'm rejecting who made her. Those were the things that made me who I am. And I'm happy with it because now I can go help others who don't feel guided.
I love that. Earlier, you mentioned the 5 things that, and then you said that there were the 3 that the, typical, Western medicine, I guess, follows, and what were the other 2 that are not covered? And just dive
So
into
the
those a little bit
five
more?
areas of human design is the cognitive, physical, mental, energetic, and spiritual are the 2 that we have a lot of people out there, oh, I don't believe in energy. But you believe in Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi that's all the way on the other side of whatever and powers your phone. Or you actually believe that there are satellites and things in the moon or wherever there are that help us power what we have here. So why is it so hard to think that we are so powerful that we can affect anyone in another place or in another room? It's the same thing. But for some reason, we don't believe it. When we look at the sun, I if you walk out dressed in completely black clothes, do you not attract the sun more? That's energy. Do you see the rays? No, but you feel the heat. So the same thing. And if you have clinicians who are not being able to explain to you your diagnosis, your symptoms, how you're feeling, whatever it is, that's happening, the strategies, the tools in all 5 aspects, then how true can it be? When a human being goes under surgery, for example, there's many layers to that surgery. You have to hope that the main surgeon puts the bones back together, but then you have other clinicians who work on the nerves, the muscles, the stitching, the saline and cleaning out of the wounds. It takes a group of people. It's not just the surgeon putting the bones together, right? So when you're working on a human being, you have to address all aspects so that he can hopefully walk out in his 2 feet. There's no way to heal without touching all 5 points, in my opinion. And this is why people keep coming back to them.
Yeah. Well, how have those, I guess, exploring those two aspects changed your life?
Oh Lord, I've done it all. I did hypnosis, I did regressions, clearing the chakras. Again, and most clinicians don't talk like this because that's not in the DSM. Those are things you got to go live it. And
Yeah.
so if you clear your chakras, which are the entry points of energy in your body, right? We tend to block them based on trauma and bad experiences, right? So for me, I would have never been doing this podcast with you. Never. Me being seen in public after all the shame and guilt that you carry around after sexual abuse? Never. But I used hypnosis and rewrote that story where my parents were both with me and holding my hands and walking me through and protecting me from what we call bad guys. I did regressions to go back and see what was really bothering me. I did family constellations to put myself in the correct role of I'm not my mother's husband, right? Um, and I can go on, but it's work that you could only really explain with you having tried it.
Yeah. And oftentimes I think people make a judgment about things that they haven't tried or explored. And every modality is not for every single person. But if you're
Correct.
feeling that you're stuck and you're not getting the answers that you want, you're not seeing the changes, you're not feeling the changes, then why not try something new? And that's
What do
really
you have
where
to
I
lose?
was. Yeah,
What do you have to
exactly.
lose? A life full of negative energy and feeling a victim and depression than trying something you've never tried that might just get you the next piece of the puzzle. And don't get me started on the plant medicine. That is that is a number. That is a number.
Get
The
started.
well, honestly, I think society is definitely preparing for those type of conversations. In the clinical world, they are currently using ketamine and, of course, medical marijuana. But to be honest, in a world where we see that people haven't been progressing and haven't been healing, why would I trust them? Why would I trust them? Even when they give you garlic, they're giving you a synthetic, maybe not potent garlic. You're better off go buying a organic garlic and mincing it up yourself. So why would I trust you with plant medicine? You need to get real organic. You need hopefully maybe leave the country, but make sure that the source is 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 trustworthy, that they have their heart in it and not just like big pharma's intention of just selling, right? But once you talk to the medicine and you give your intention and you use it for what it was meant for, to connect with it and heal with it and be able to ground, it gives you all the answers you were looking for. And for
Yeah.
me, it has been an amazing experience. And the cherry on top, it's the cherry on top to healing.
Yeah. Well, I think a key part to the plant medicine that is sometimes forgotten is the integration in the community, because, even with those types of modalities, it's not just in that moment that that experience, that journey is happening with the actual medicine going into your body. That medicine stays in your body and continues to work its magic days, weeks, months, afterwards. And even prior to it happening, once you've made that decision that you're going to partake and be part, add that to your journey and your experience, that being with people that can help you through that and understanding and processing of those different pieces and components that you're learning during those journeys is incredibly important as well.
Well, and those are people who have also been there, done that. One of the
Mhm.
things that I like to explain when it comes to the medical field, and I feel like I'm sounding like I'm bashing them, but it's forget them. You want to heal, right? And if you think about your doctors, your nurses, your clinicians, they never been through a surgery. They never had endometriosis. They never. If you go to a hospital, some of your actual clinicians, your nurses, are almost more obese and more inflamed than the actual patient. But they yet are
That's so
not
sad.
sitting in the hospital bed like you are. But that's the closest to maybe relating to the actual patient. But most of the time, you're a doctor sitting in a chair showing you this is what you should do, and you should take this, and you should take that. And they never been in your chair. Yet, when you're going to
Mhm.
someone like me or plant medicine and your shamans and people who, it's because they've been there. It's a different perspective to help you because I know where you've been or to just make believe I'm helping you because I think I know. There's a big difference. And you will feel that difference. You will feel when someone looks you in the eye and says, I want to help you because I know what that feels like. And I don't want anybody to feel that.
Wow. I love that. That's so true. So true. Can you tell us a little bit more about family constellations? I know I've heard that, but I don't know a lot about it. So explain that.
So family constellations is where you do the energetic work to place everybody in their correct roles. So if you notice, it is very common for, let's say, if mom is divorced, dad either passed away or leaves the home. Usually, that eldest child becomes the person who gets all their responsibilities, kind of like becoming parentified, right? And sometimes parents will use that child in the place of who would have been that relationship, right? So whether the husband, the boyfriend, or whatever. And so that energetic connection doesn't go away until you have a family constellation session. And in the session, you're basically opening up your consciousness, your level of consciousness to be able to break free and place yourself in the correct role. It's amazing work. For more information on that, there is an excellent series called Another Self that does a great job as explaining and bringing consciousness to how this work is coming about. And you can do the constellation for anything. It could be the relationship with mom that mom feels like she's my boss, or it could be my relationship with dad where dad is too attached to me and doesn't have a good relationship with mom, or maybe siblings. I'm my sister's caretaker for however many years, and now she sees me as her mom as opposed to her sister, because those things affect how we make decisions and how we're going to build. If you're married to your mom, you're not going to have a successful marriage with who you're supposed to be married with because you're too much paying attention to what your mom needs and instead of her having lived her role in her life. I see that a lot in current relationships where the females in the relationship want to be their husband's moms instead of their lover. Your husband has a mother. So why are you being his mother? And this it
And
goes back
nobody
to the
wants to do
feminine,
that.
it goes
But
back to the
then when you're
feminine
doing
and
it,
masculine energy.
yeah, I so I completely see that with my parents and my mom becoming my dad's mother and just doing the exact same things, that she did and living that life, but resenting it. And
Exactly.
and then I've seen that with myself, and follow up with that is trying to do all of the things, but then being resentful that you're doing all of the things and feeling the need to control everything, and the partner to not either be capable of doing things or not be Whether that's intellectually, emotionally, financially, any capacity, that they don't have the capacity to do it. So then it's just done for them, and then you're frustrated that you're doing it for them, but you're not even giving them an opportunity to do it because you've kind of gone into that type of role.
And here are the most hurtful words that you're walking into. Did I ask you to do that? Did I ask you? And most men who have a relationship where their spouse or girlfriend is their mother, guess what they do? They go out to go get that lover. And then you get mad at them for doing that. And then you go in the victim role of, how could he do that to me? Well, did he really do it to you? You walked into the mother role.
Yeah.
And that's where we start to take responsibility for what was my responsibility in being cheated on.
Exactly.
Again, it's about him and how he decided to
Hmm.
communicate feeling like your mom as opposed to a lover. But it's also your responsibility to have known your role when you walked in the relationship.
Exactly. And I see all of that so incredibly clearly now, of how controlling I was trying to be in that relationship. And it was like, the tighter my grasp was, the further away he was trying to get.
Mm-hmm.
And the tighter my grasp was because of the insecurities I was having with myself.
It's an attachment. We form bonds based on our attachment styles, especially when we don't heal those attachment styles. And most of the time, when you have issues with self worth or you go into trauma, the first thing we build is that anxious or preoccupied attachment.
Oh, definitely. And I see how much of what I repeated from my mother, and she grew up in an alcoholic, father, and very codependent type childhood, and many other things. But then she was very codependent with my father, who then also continued that same habit, right? And then I was doing those same things. The codependency was just on fire for me, and I didn't realize that that was the life that I was living, that I was choosing, and depending on revolving basically everything around another person, and my validation and the love and value that I deserve and own was coming from someone else outside of me. And until I realized that that was not a healthy relationship, and that that was not the way that I wanted to live my life, I was just trapped in that circle. Felt like I couldn't get out of it.
Well, in terms of guidance, and what to do's, right? Because that's usually what what people want to hear from
Yeah.
me is, what do I do? Tell me what to do. My first step one is definitely clear out your energy. Clear out your energy so you can think, so you can see. And how I would do that is organize your space, get into those spaces that you haven't gone into in a while that's just holding energy. Usually when you're in a bad place, your life is just looking for change, right? So you want to go get massages, you want to have a soak in bath salts, you want to clean out your house, you want to remove yourself from toxic people for a little bit. You're just doing a good cleanse in all aspects. When you can get through that cleanse, now you want to go see, okay, what do I need to gain understanding? And to gain understanding, you do a lot of self assessments. Do you know yourself? Are you an expert of yourself? So if I ask you, who are you? What do you like? What you don't like to do? What do you think you, and honestly, this is where most people get stuck. They think they know themselves, but they spend more time assessing outward and assessing other people than they do themselves. And then you ask them simple questions like, oh, I never thought of that. I don't know. Well, if you're not an expert of your vehicle, of your body, of you, you're not going to heal anything. Because the reason you're coming to me is because you don't know. Because if you knew yourself, you wouldn't be here. So that would be number two. Definitely becoming an expert of you and really assessing, and then getting clear on, what do you want? What do you want? Yes, I want to get rid of anxiety, but what do you want? How do you want to live life? What type of relationship do you want? Get clear on what is it. You're just not going to therapy. just because you want to get rid of depression. The depression is just telling you you're living in a different time zone and situation. But then if you get to the present and you actually feel good, now what do you want? And what's going to stop you from going back to that situation? It's usually being clear on those questions, right? And then once you're clear, I have it written on paper, this is the type of life that I want. Then we go start on working the barriers. What are the barriers you have to that? Oh, maybe I don't know English. Well, let's go sign up for a class. Oh, but I'm scared. Let's talk about that fear. Do we need to clear your chakras? Because is that energy that's not getting to where it needs to go? Do you have vitamin deficiencies because you can't sleep? Or vice versa, you can't sleep because you have vitamin deficiencies. So it's it's steps by steps that you can get to the place where you want to be.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ellie. That's a great place for people to start. And we'll put in the show notes place to find you. But do you want to just share where people can look for more information?
Of course, I have Psychology Today at Ellie Ramirez, or you can look me up on Instagram, Ellie_Healing with Compassion.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today and
Thank you,
sharing
Amanda.
your story and your journey and insights that can help others along theirs.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, what a powerful message about healing and transforming your life. Ellie shared some incredible insights, and I want to help you take those to heart. So let's recap and apply these steps to your own journey. The first step, an energy check and cleanse. Ellie emphasized that healing often starts with our environment and our inner state. So, why don't you ask yourself, what does my current environment feel like? Does it lift me up or does it drag me down? Maybe where am I holding on to negativity? In my space? Maybe it's in my relationships or even within myself. The call to action here is, what is one small thing that I can do today to declutter, organize, or create more positive space? Are there any toxic influences that I need to distance from? Maybe even just temporarily. Step 2, becoming an expert of you. This is a key theme of Ellie's conversation today with self-awareness. And you can't heal what you don't understand. So, to become an expert of you, ask yourself, how do I really know myself? Like beyond the surface, what are my core values, my true passions, maybe even my deepest fears? Am I spending more time focused on other people's lives than on my own healing and my own inner world? Some action steps to take is to take some time this week for self-reflection. Journal, meditate, or simply quiet your mind and ask yourself these tough questions. Make a list. What are my top 5 strengths? And what are 3 areas that I want to improve? Number 3, defining your desired life. Healing just isn't just about escaping pain. It's about creating a fulfilling future. Ask yourself, if I could wave a magic wand, what would my ideal life look like? Be specific. What kind of relationships? What kind of career? What kind of daily activities would you be doing? Actions. Write down a vision for your future. Don't limit yourselves. What steps can you take this month to move closer to that vision? Step 4, breaking down the barriers. Once you know where you want to go, now it's time to tackle it and see what is in your way. Ask yourself, what obstacles, both internal and external, are preventing me from achieving my goals? Are there any skills that I need to learn? Maybe fears that I should face? Or limiting beliefs that I need to change or release? Choose one barrier and brainstorm some solutions. Break it down into manageable steps. If you suspect any energy blockages, research some holistic practices like chakra clearing or energy work. And if you need help with any of those, boy, do I have I have a good resource for you guys. If you have some blocked energy, let me know. I can direct you guys to somebody who can heal you and help you with whatever blockage you have. This episode had a lot of content today, some powerful roadmap for healing and growth. And remember that this takes time, so be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and keep moving forward. And before we wrap up, I would like to hear from you guys. What's your biggest takeaway from this episode? Head over to our Instagram page at back2 the heart 2 love me, and let me know your comments on our latest posts. And I would love for you to share if you know someone who is struggling, seeking answers, or maybe they're ready to embark on their own healing journey. Maybe they want to get off of their medications. Maybe they're just looking for a better way to live. Please share this episode with them. It could be the spark that ignites their transformation. You can find us and more on our Instagram page at back2the heart 2 love me. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Back to the Heart. If you are ready to awaken to a life filled with joy and purpose, subscribe now to Back to the Heart on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And remember, we are all one. So let's do this together and rediscover the essence of what inspires us all. Back to the heart.